Greetings, everyone. This is Rock and Roll Spot coming at you with the return of the weekly comic book roundup. Yeah, today was the first new comic book day in 6 weeks, I think. Maybe 7. Something like it's been a while. It's been a minute, you know. But anyway, it's a rather light week. No Marvel books shipped. From what I understand, most of the companies are just kind of being very gradual to start things back up, which is to be commended, to be perfectly honest. In fact, this week it was large. It was just DC and a bunch of the smaller companies that were putting out books. Next week there should potentially be some Marvel books, but we'll see what hits the shops next week. Anyway, getting started, we've got DCeased, Unkillables, number 3. Where we left off at Unkillables number 2, the heroes we'd gotten to the end, basically to the end of the initial DCeased miniseries. The surviving heroes had left the Earth, and Wonder Woman revealed that the zombies had a degree of intelligence and killed Cyborg before he could try and create a cure. But that was actually in DC's, yeah. In Unkillables number 2, the villains had arrived at the orphanage, and we're helping. We're actually helping with everything, and however, zombies attacked. Bane was at the very least Bane was turned, as were some of the others. So yeah, things weren't looking good for our assembled heroes. We begin with an anti-life Bane attacking, while Deathstroke and Gordon urge everyone inside. However, there is someone stronger than Bane present. Solomon Grundy, who rips off Bane's head and tosses the head into the head of one of the other anti-life zombies, which prompts Creeper to say that's the first headbutt he's ever seen without a body behind it. Grundy comes in with anti-life zombies hanging off him, telling the kids to run, and, well, yeah, the narration states that most kids would fall apart faced with a situation like this, but these ones are different. A few of the ones that are pointed out are Letitia, 14 years old, likes ponies, knows how to kill a man 6 ways with her bare hands. Gareth, 7 years old, likes tree lobsters, can survive the harshest environments, and can carry a heavy pack while running for 4 straight hours. Zaid, 12 years old, likes seeing things blow up, can crush a skull with a slingshot 50 paces. Matilda, 8 years old, likes cheetah, has trained to strangle a pompous princess with her own golden lasso. And yeah, the kids actually do start, but Gordon and Slade promptly grab them and say, fall back, okay? Creeper goes off to save Grundy, because, well, Grundy can't die on Monday. It would ruin the whole rhyme. And they figure that there's really only one place they can go, that's the Gotham jungle. So they get the kids into this 2 buses, everyone on board. with the Batmobile leading the way. However, they have for a small thing. Mirror Master, who attacks Deathstroke through the rearview mirror of the bus he's driving. Deathstroke then orders all the windows be knocked out, but Mirror Master slips back in, grabs one of the kids, actually grabs a few of the kids, and is about to go after Matilda, but Cheetah saves her. As the caravan gets closer to Gotham, well, we realize there are still a lot of anti-life zombies running around. Rose warns Jason that something's coming and tells him to put on a seatbelt, and yeah. What's coming hits the Batmobile and upends it, and is revealed to be none other than Wonder Woman, presumably fresh after killing Cyborg. However, one thing Wonder Woman wasn't counting on is that among the protectors of these children is Cheetah. And so Creeper and Grundy go to help out, and honestly, buy them all some time. Slade and Gordon have the kids on bus 1 moved to bus 2, and Cassandra, Batgirl, has gotten off, is working on getting her on board, but she's grabbed by some of the anti-life zombies. Letitia takes over driving the bus while Shiva goes to do something idiotic. And so as they make their way towards the bus, Batgirl gets back on board, and Shiva's about to get on when one of the anti-life zombies scratches her across the back. And is probably decapitated for it, or at least mostly decapitated. Shiva tells Batgirl that Batgirl is the only person she admired. And then Shiva rips her own heart out. Gordon and Deathstroke make it to the upended Batmobile, pull Jason and Rose out, prepare to get on bus 1 when the remains of Cheetah and Grundy are thrown into the bus by Wonder Woman. Deathstroke basically, Deathstroke sacrifices himself to save Gordon, Jason, and Rose. And Rose, being able to see the future, knows it's not going to go well for him. And they hug and say goodbye. Wonder Woman manages to dispatch Cheetah and Creeper, and and as well as Grundy. Deathstroke basically just draws a line. After all, his body will heal itself if he gets infected. But if there's no body, it can't heal, and so Wonder Woman flies through Deathstroke, obliterating him. And picks up the remaining bus. And one of the passengers is revealed to be none other than Mary Batson, who says Shazam and saves the day. She goes after Wonder Woman, explaining that a few months previously this wouldn't have even been a fight. The wisdom of Solomon, strength of Hercules, stamina of Atlas, power of Zeus, courage of Achilles, and speed of Mercury didn't matter. She would have just been a well-intentioned kid and instantly taken out by the anti-life equation and turned against her friends. But she had something beyond the power of Shazam. She had 3 months of training with Cassandra Cain. She had the ruthless efficiency of Lady Shiva. And she had enough of being scared. And Mary picks up the bus and carries it to the jungle. When Gordon tells him to, be careful because Wonder Woman will probably be coming, Ivy explains that she won't because she can't breach the garden. Dr. Fate explains that it is magically protected against her and her kind. Zatanna welcomes her to the post-apocalyptic Eden, and John Constantine basically says it's pretty if you could ignore all the dead people scraping at the walls. Harley's quite pleased that all the new kids they get to corrupt, but Jason bursts her bubble by explaining that Jason and Rose burst her bubble by explaining that these kids come pre-corrupted by the best. And then later, a monument is made to Grundy, Bane, Creeper, Shiva, Cheetah, Deadshot, and Deathstroke. It says on it, villains, saviors, family, tree lobsters. And that is where this DCeased Unkillables concludes. Next up, we've got Daphne Byrne, number 4. Most of the books I picked up, obviously, were from the Hill House line, clearly. So, where we left off, Daphne went to speak to basically a professional skeptic. Her brother, shall we say, is not pleased with this. Also, it seems that, unbeknownst to Daphne, her mother is has unwittingly participated in a ritual of the medium. And so, the skeptic, Mr. Brooke, shows Daphne around. Back at the medium, Daphne's mother Althea awakes, and the medium explains that they call out to Frederick, and when the spirit came through, Althea fainted. It happened because Althea wasn't heeding Frederick's words. He was begging for her to listen. Then the spirit energy burst into the room and like water from a dam, and it overwhelmed her poor nerves. However, Althea notices that her dress feels a little loose. Though the medium says, yes, of course, I took the liberty of unlacing you a bit so that you could breathe. Mr. Fleming has apparently gone to fetch a doctor. They'll be back any moment. Daphne speaking with Mr. Brooke, explaining who the medium, Mrs. Swarthmore. Apparently, Brooke has a record of all the spiritualist types in the city, and he finds a name and address for Swarthmore. Note saying she gives a seance each day at 11 with private consultations thereafter. So Brooke declares that what they'll do is he'll be posing as a bereaved father, and they'll show Mrs. Byrne that Swarthmore is a fraud. All the spiritualists that he's encountered so far, more than a dozen, balderdash, all of them. And so, Brooke walks Daphne most of the way home, parting ways early, so basically so that Althea won't see him. After Daphne leaves, however, someone throws a rock at Brooke's head, hitting him. Turns out, however, that Mr. Fleming is at the Byrne household, having ordered provisions and insisting that they dine at once. Daphne goes to her room and is infuriated. That brother asks why Daphne was so quick to tell Mr. Brooke. Then she explains that she liked him, and he was kind to her. Her brother claims that she's as desperate for affection as a little dog, just like her mother. And he takes her to another dream. In the dream, she's in a coffin. The only way out is down. She goes into a nightmare world and catches her and removes her skin in the dream. It's time for her to meet the source of all they have. And she's pleased him, apparently. She wakes with her skin back, a slight raw portion on her arm, so that she'll remember. The next day, Daphne discusses Mr. Fleming with her mother as they head to Mrs. Swarthmore's. And Daphne's rather impressed by Mr. Brooks' performance, thinking he should have gone on the stage. During everything, the bell comes up, and Brooke promptly reveals the truth. A rod is pushed through a hole in the table to levitate the bell. Probably a trapdoor below, hiding one of Miss Swarthmore's Confederates. But Althea won't have it. Is, of course, completely devoted to Miss Swarthmore, and when asked to leave, and when she asks Brooke to leave, he does. Althea then turns her anger on her daughter, saying that it's twice that those who loved her have betrayed her. First was when her father died in a den of was when her husband, Daphne's father, died in a den of sin. However, this one truly cuts at her very heart. Daphne inspired a stranger trying to ruin the only sacred thing she has. Althea explains that she's not persuaded by her friend's preposterous tricks. Daphne tried, hey, these people are the ones who are tricking you. Mr. Fleming is helping Miss Swarthmore, and she's sure, and Daphne's sure of it. Which leads to Althea slapping Daphne across the face. However, the skin around Daphne's eyes briefly retreats, revealing the muscle beneath, and her eyes, in fact, turn into something distinctly inhuman as she grabs her mother by the throat. As she realizes what she's doing, she returns to normal and runs away. That is where the issue ends. And of course, we've also got chapter 21 of Sea Dogs. After blundering into the heart of a Spanish fleet, the HMS Havoc takes flight into a hurricane. But not before the crew is mauled by withering fire from the enemy. The broadsides tear up deck and sails and smash dozens of men, including a beloved child. The young boy dies on the operating table. The doctor insists that Jeannie change as her shirt is soaked through. And the teacher then comes in, and having come as soon as he heard about what happened to Harry. The doctor explains to Mr. Falk that while Falk was a fine teacher, the child will now receive instruction from one petter. Then adds they have more to discuss, but he fears the operating theater will require all his attention for the next few turns of the glass. He then asks for Mr. Falk's discretion until he's available. And Falk, please do carry on. On the deck, explaining that 119 men of the crew will never see England again. They hardly have enough left alive to handle the ship. The captain then says they'd rather take their chances of storm, but he does call for Mr. Conkapot. And that is where the chapter ends. Which brings us to Dollhouse Family, number 6. Where we left off, the dollhouse had promised Una that her mother Alice would be whole again if Una simply agreed to come to the house. And so Alice did her research on the house and its origins, and those who owned it previously, and learned a few things. In the house, Una is being brought in by the young woman that was corrupted by the house. Apparently, the dollhouse does want to tie. There's something of the black room inside Una. And that essence starts to take on the form of a person, but it's not enough. The Black Room explains that she needs the mother as well. In Ireland, Alice is being explained the history, the real history of the dollhouse and cloacs, by a cat. The cat explains that its battle with Cloax was part of a wider struggle that began before the human race crawled out of the sea. They bested her at last, cast her down, but the cat's spear, whose touch would have ended her, was broken. The best the cat could do was imprison her. Imprison her with, wards all around it and its self-standing guard, but Cloax lulled the cat to sleep. While the cat slept, Cloax lured a human into the cave and copulated with him, basically spreading her essence into him. He then passed the corruption unknowing to his wife. Cloax entered and was born from her. Some of the demon substance went into the child, and some into the afterbirth, which became the dollhouse. She then lured Joseph Kent's descendants into the house one by one, because they're her descendants too. Each of them contains a little piece of Cloax. When she has enough, she will be born again out of the dollhouse and into the world. The cat even says that breaking herself into pieces to escape was a clever trick, and one worth copying. Cloax may eat your world before she leaves, or may not. But she will certainly take the dollhouse back into herself, and her daughter will live on, and Una, Alice's daughter, will live on inside her. Cordwainer is a bit troubled. He remembers his own ordeal, but very little from before who he was. Who he was, how he lived, and the house takes so much from him. And, well, the cat was also telling Alice everything. It was also in the form of another cat telling Jake the same thing. And so, they begin to gather things up. Hammer, chisel. And so, Alice goes into the dollhouse. Blackman explaining that all Alice really ever had to do was ask. Everyone's happy to see Alice again. And the Black Room takes the portion of her of Cloax from her, and she explains to the family that there's a metal in the rocks called Stalingeal. Joseph Kent collected every scrap of it he could find. They need to refine it out, and they need to do it fast. Cordwainer asks just what the metal does, and so Alice punches young Miss Leach with it, who promptly disintegrates from it. So, they begin to get the metal out and line the door with it. Meanwhile, Una covers her prosthetic hand with it. However, the Black Room does mention something to her. The entire house is of Cloax's flesh, the seat of her spirit. Why would Cloax come and go by the door? And Cloax reveals its true form, which is, Una goes after it, scraping her now metal-covered hand along Cloax's face, hurting it. Alice, who's made something of a bullet with I know that's not the actual word, but for term for this, but shoots Cloax, and Jake splits the dollhouse in two with the hammer and chisel in the real. And the cat goes and grabs the remains of Cloax. The cat thanks Alice for leaving the kill of Cloax to it. And the cat thinks. When Alice asks, "What now?" The rules of engagement are clear. The cat should burn the world to its core to cleanse it of the fiend's contagion. Half-measures are dangerous in situations like this. But the cat is mindful of the help that was given. These humans, whose lives fade more quickly than sparks, the cat finds itself reluctant to end them. And there is another way. The cat mends the timeline, cauterizing it. Each of them has the life they would have had if the beast had never fallen to this plane. Alice, being the most recent, is also the easiest. Only have to rewind her a matter of a few years. Her father goes into a program and to sort himself out. In college, Alice meets Jake. They have a child. Since the cell angel touched her and blessed her, the blessing cannot be removed. So she will always have a metallic right arm, though no longer a prosthetic. There are more demons in Una's future. More blood, more battle, more glorious slaughter. And the cat cannot wait to teach Una. That is where the Dollhouse Family ends. Moving on to chapter 22 of Sea Dogs. Captain Wollstonecraft and Mr. Conkapot are discussing the cause of death of some of the men. Captain explaining that he saw the fiend responsible, a beast like a man but larger with the head of a dog. He then adds that in the Orlop they both perceived tracks that began as the print of a paw and concluded in the shape of a man's foot. So Clonkapot tells an old story of his people, the Mi'kmaq. A dozen generations before Mr. Conkapot's grandmother's grandmother was born, the Mi'kmaq people met golden-haired men who had come from across the endless seas, Vikings. The elders offered to celebrate their arrival with a great feast and joyous song. They had brought fierce northern magic with them from across the sea. The Northman's weapon inflicted a terrible living death. The golden-haired chieftain took off the head of a tribal elder with one swing of his cruel axe. After the old man had been decapitated, he continued to shout for his brothers and sisters to run. That axe sounds very familiar. The golden-haired chieftain said he accepted the Mi'kmaq's offer of feast and song. He used his terrible axe to strike down every man over the age of 14 and commanded their still living heads to sing for the lives of their women and children. The Northman bragged that he and his men were wolves of the sea, come to claim the rich Mi'kmaq harvest of corn and females. But the Northmen had misjudged their enemies. Among the tribal people, all true power resides with the grandmothers, who have terrible magics of their own. Like Rabbit in the old stories, they snared the moon and brought him to earth. In his blinding, unearthly light, all things were revealed to their true forms. The Northmen wanted to be thought wolves. By moonlight they became dogs, cowering before all our peoples, Mi'kmaq, Mohawk, and the many other tribes. These cursed Northmen have walked among us ever since, wolves hidden in the skins of men. Also, there's a close-up of the axe, showing that, yes, it is the axe from Basket Full of Heads. And that brings us to Our final comic of the week, Plunge, number 3. Where we left off, there had been an explosion aboard the McCready. However, some of the crew had found something. The issue begins about northwest of Nome, Alaska, around 11 in the morning on the 3rd of October, 1983. A life raft is found with a dead woman with a dead body in it, clutching a piece of paper with a mathematical formula written on it. In the present, Russell has met the crew. One of them announced himself as being Julian. Explained that Julian promptly asks just what happened to the crew's eyes. Julian explained that there's an indigenous worm that causes a kind of blindness. And that it's explained that they use other senses to compensate for their blindness. Russell then asks how many there are, and Julian says, that's a difficult question to answer. Some math is hard, some is easy. It depends on how you count and how you define them. So Russell then asks how they got there, and Julian says that the Derleth brought us. So Russell asks Julian how old he is, to which Julian responds, he's lost track. Some math is hard. On McCready, they're looking over the core of the explosion, where Martin was apparently killed. The company man, Lancome, however, wants to know just, okay, well, the ship's damaged, you have a dead crewman, how much is this going to set us back? And the captain explains that, one of his crew's dead. The operation's over. The only thing salvaging now is his crew and his boat. So Lancome asks how long before they can expect help. Asking if there's time to go aboard the Derleth. But the captain explains that Lancome's not listening to him. His primary job is to get his men back home to their families. So, Lancome asks there will be an airlift from Attu Island, because it's closest. Though the captain explains it's not. Closest help is the Kamchatka. And, well, Lancome talked to them about salvaging Derleth. However, Lancome would prefer to get support from the Coast Guard on Attu. However, the captain's not too fond of one of his men getting cooked alive and his boat getting half blown apart. He also tells Lancome there's no Coast Guard on Attu. They pulled out after the tsunami. But Lancome can't endorse a strategy that draws a foreign power to syndicate before they've recovered Rococo's valuable corporate property. The captain does promptly also retorts by saying that he's about to put some of Rococo's valuable corporate property overboard to see how well it swims. The conversation is over. If Lancome wants to do a deal with the next salvaging, they'll be there in 24 hours. And Lancome might want to be brushing up on his Russian. The explosion on the ship has been seen from the island. And Bill and Russell return, along with the crew of the Derleth. Clark calls McCready, says that the captain may want to come ashore and bring some fresh clothes for Mariah since she took a dip. And he also explains they found the crew of the Derleth and that they're not dead. So they head over there. Russell's been given a boon with his Walkman. He can hear everyone's thoughts. Clark is quick to suggest taking the headphones off of Russell so that, well, he's not hearing everyone's thoughts because, well, no one really wants to hear all that. And so, the remaining crew comes ashore. The captain discusses everything. Begins having a discussion with Russell, or with Julian. However, Lancome has a few secrets to tell. Explaining that 7 months after the Derleth went missing, Captain Jane Lucas's corpse turned up on a raft north of Nome. Her body was discovered with a formula that proved the stronger Millen conjecture, a proposal concerning logarithmic coefficients. And the Lucas paper solved a problem that had baffled mathematicians for years. And she solved Millen, however, Lancome solved the rest of the message. He saw it right away. At the bottom of the paper were 5 numbers, 0, 1, 1, 3, 4. They were dismissed as being random digits. However, when Lancome finally saw it, he recognized the joke. It was a joke for math nerds. Hello. The joke of a math nerd. Sort of like spelling boobs on a calculator by typing 80085. And Lancome thought that the hello was an invitation and promised the possibility of more. And so Lancome asks Julian if there is more. With Julian explaining that in the cave on the hill, they've solved pi to the end. Lancome dismisses this, saying pi doesn't end. Julian disagrees. Explaining it does, and to see the complete number is to see the universe as the God of Christ and Judas Iscariot might see it, were he not long dead. They have shown the truth of the Riemann hypothesis and confirmed Kuzek's conjecture. Those are a little more than the games of children. They depend on Euclidean mathematics with their flawed attachment to a rational universe, and they can offer so much more. Lancome, of course, wants to know. Especially if they have a proof that confirms Krosiek's, that could be worth a great deal to several industries. Julian says that they would offer a tribute for doing them a kindness. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh, you might say. The captain says, you don't owe us anything for rescuing us. It's their jobs. But Julian says, no. We're not talking about you rescuing us. We're talking about a kindness you have yet to do. Mariah, however, realizes that in part Julian refers to things such as the headphones that Russell's wearing. Julian explaining that souls resonate at their own frequency, like sound or light. They had provided Russell with an instrument for tuning into such wavelengths, so he can perceive human thought. And he promptly proves it to Mariah. The captain asks that the headphones be removed from Russell's head. And while Lancome is impressed, he's more he places more faith in hard, verifiable numbers. Julian says, of course, he can believe in what can be seen under the microscope, far more than he believes in the soul, despite the evidence of your senses. And he hands Lankham a vial. Now look at that. It's an oil, a small amount, and a small amount there in the vial can power the entire state of California for 1,100 years. It contains enough power to detonate like a warhead and burn for a millennium. They can already confirm this with what happened on the McCready. Mariah then says, we've got frankincense and myrrh, the headphones, the oil, and asks if Bill is holding the gold. Explain it, yes, the ingot. Julian then asks if the captain can borrow some of his men. And Bill is told to show the rest of the group the ingot. The ones who have been borrowed by Julian see it and immediately claim it as their own. The four men then fight. After Bill is forced to drop the ingot, the four men fight over it, viciously. With Bill killing two of them to take the ingot back. And once he's got it back, by this point, his right eye has been nearly ripped out of his skull. And that is where the issue ends. And we're going to skip the chapter, this week's Plunge's chapter of Sea Dogs, on account of the fact that it's chapter 24, and chapter 23 should be coming next week in the Low Woods. And that is it for this week's roundup. She'll be back tomorrow with another 100 Bullets retro review. Then got some other stuff lined up for various ones. Clear, obviously, as there were no Marvel books this week, let alone X books. There will be no Mutant Monday this coming Monday. But yeah, that's it for now. As always, this is Rock and Roll Spock's on. Oh, of course, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Links to my Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, and PayPal can be found in the description box down below. This is Rock and Roll Spock signing off, saying live long, rock hard, and be safe, everyone.